I'm Leone Ellis and I'm a play therapist and a forest school leader, and I work 1 day a week for the outdoor school. Today I'm going to talk to you about play therapy and forest school and how I merge them, but also how you can just take play therapy outdoors. So I trained about 15 years ago to be a play therapist by doing a master's degree, and then about 3 years ago I did my forest school level 3 training. I found when I did the training that the overlap between the core elements of play therapy and the key elements of forest school really exciting. The fact that it was letting children lead and using play and hands-on experience to engage them, that really resonated with me as the right way to be with children. And it also resonated with me as a person with my values in life. So a few years earlier, I'd begun taking children outside during play therapy sessions rather spontaneously when I had an 8-year-old boy who sadly had experienced domestic violence at home, and he just couldn't stay in the classroom for more than 5 or 10 minutes at a time. So they referred him to me at play therapy, and he was a bit the same in the playroom. He could hardly sit still, he was hanging backwards off the sofa, jumping up the walls, throwing things. So after about 4 sessions, I thought I would open the door and take him outside to the playground, where the change was immediate. He started walking calmly by my side, and we found a clump of trees and sat down, and he picked up a stick and he just started peeling. And we sat for about half an hour, which is a long time for that boy. And just peeling the bark off a stick, he opened up and told me all about his worries, about his little brother being at home and him being scared for him and feeling really anxious. That's why he couldn't stay still. So after he told us that, the school could address his issues and we could help him feel safe at school. So I knew I was onto something then, and so I started reading about ecotherapy, about nature connection, about wilderness therapy and all nature-based therapies. So I began my journey of merging play therapy with the outdoors. I later came across a book by Chown called Play Therapy in the Outdoors, and a course called Land Play by Cairt, and I am now on a national body called the Collaboration of Outdoor Play Therapists with Cairt and Ali, where we support play therapists to learn how to take their play outdoors. So what is play therapy? It's a form of counselling and psychotherapy where play is used as a means of helping children to communicate their feelings and express themselves creatively. As play is children's natural medium of communication, it can be really helpful in helping them work through emotional or psychological issues. It uses a specifically selected toolkit of toys that promote expression of feeling and creativity. So we have sand trays with miniature figures, we have dressing up clothes and props, we have puppets, we have musical instruments, and we have art materials as well as clay. So the play with these toys alone is not therapeutic. It's the presence of the trained therapist who applies the non-directive play skills and principles that helps the child gain insight into their inner feelings. And what's ultimately key to it being therapy is the relationship between the child and the therapist. As if that is not a trusted bond, then therapy can't take place. So always keeping in mind the principle of as few limits as possible, but as many as necessary to keep the child physically and psychologically safe, which is also similar to forest school. So who comes to play therapy? Children get referred to me for many reasons, some being normal life events like divorce or bereavement, others for unusual life events like trauma, neglect or abuse, along with non-neurotypical children, often who are struggling in life. So basically any child that is showing us through their behaviour that they're not managing. You can do play therapy outdoors anywhere, like in a garden, in public gardens, on woodland. As long as you've got the right permissions, insurance and the right qualifications, then that's fine. The main thing is that you've got to create a confidential, safe space for the child, like you do on the inside with play therapy. It has to be a place where you're not going to be interrupted or people aren't going to walk past and ask what you're doing. It's got to be a container for the therapy so that things can remain confidential. So all these things are covered comprehensively in the book I mentioned earlier and the courses. So one setting where I work is the outdoor school, which is where I am today, where I'm working in this woodland. So I'll show you around a typical setting that I work in. So you need to have a shelter of some kind above you for protecting you from the elements if it's too hot or too cold, and putting things in that you don't want to get wet. You also need to have important things with you like first aid kit and a means of contacting other colleagues in case of emergency. And then you need your basic toolkit with you of the toys that you want to use to play with the children. So I began teaching a 6-year-old girl who had had many traumas in her very young life. She lives in Cairt and hadn't had much nurturing, loving relationships with any adults. So I'd taken her out. I've been working with her for a year inside, and I took her outside and taught her to light fires with fire steels. And watching her do this with a cotton bud and fire steels, as she took about 20 times to get the fire lit, but when she did, and then not only building the fire and keeping it going with wood that she'd collected, but then making pancake batter with eggs and flour and milk and mixing that together and cooking pancakes and eating them all herself, completely created by herself, was a really transformative experience for this child, because not only were the skills of perseverance, risk-taking, resilience, increased self-esteem that forest school leaders know happen doing these things, but when put in the container of a therapeutic relationship and space, it amplified these qualities to make this a transformative experience for this child. Also considering that she hadn't had many opportunities like this, or any opportunities like this in her life, to make mistakes and learn and grow. So not only can you use forest school tools outside in your kit, you don't have to do that. You can just adapt your traditional play therapy kit by taking your whatever toys you choose outside with you, maybe in a backpack that you can carry, and setting up outside. And one of the main things that you need to do is create a rope or a container space where you have boundaries that the child doesn't cross, to create the actual safe space and area that you're going to do your therapy in. You can use a rope, you can use sticks, you can use willow, depending where you're doing it. Other thing you can do is also use natural items in your play therapy kit, which is something I've started doing more recently, doing homemade musical instruments, or even making them with the child, making puppets or miniature people and figures out of stones or sticks or pine cones, which really add to the creativity and the experience of being outside and not having to carry everything with you. When working outside in nature, nature becomes the co-facilitator of the therapy. The wind, the rain, the smells all create the sensory experience. There's a growing evidence in literature with Richard Mabey's Nature Cure and Richard Louve's Nature Deficit Disorder that just tells us how good nature is for our mental health. I see it in the children I work with. I see the freedom to make mess, to make noise, to be out in the space and to be playful. And I can feel it in myself. The days I work outside, I can feel more energized. I find it much easier to be in the moment, to be playful and to be creative, than on the days that I'm inside, where I can feel quite depleted after a day's work. So go outside and try it for yourself and see if you feel any different.